Let's now talk about the steps for getting that UX job that you want. What we're going to cover in this lesson is what are employers looking for when they recruit a UX person. I'll cover the sorts of things you need to include in your resume or your CV and give you some tips. I'll also talk about getting a UX job without those 3 years experience that you might see in lots of job ads. And I'll talk about how do you tap into this hidden job market. And then I'm going to give you some tips for doing UX job interviews. So let's start with what employers and recruiters are looking for. I interviewed UX managers and recruiters and came up with 6 key attributes that make up a good UX designer. Many employers are looking for soft skills as well as what we call the UX set of skills. These are often harder to teach people. These key attributes, things like empathetic, can you understand the customer's position? Problem solver, are you good at sort of looking at things and going, I just have to fix that? You just like to solve problems. Are you a curious person? Do you like understanding how people tick? Are you collaborative? Do you like working with people, with stakeholders, with customers? And like collaborating with designers and developers and business analysts and product managers? Are you analytical? Do you like looking at data and making sense of it and then telling a story with that data? And are you engaging and persuasive? Can you convince stakeholders that your approach is the best way to go and to listen to the customer's perspective? So employers have said, basically you need to demonstrate to them your passion for UX and that willingness to learn and be part of a team where you can learn and grow. This is what employers are often looking for, and this is what's going to help you stand out in the crowd. Now, I'm just going to cover some tips that you include in your resume or your CV, depending on which part of the world you live in. First of all, number 1, you want to make sure you tailor your resume to each role. Don't just have a master that you churn out and flick to employers. You need to really determine the selection criteria for the role that you're applying for, and you need to spend probably 1 or 2 hours at least tailoring your resume for that specific job. So it's really important that if an employer picks up your resume, they can quickly align and match that with the selection criteria. If you've had a fancy job title, make sure you use standard job titles. You don't have to have the exact job title that you had, or especially if it's really vague. I think one of my first formal roles was usability specialist, change manager, and business analyst. That was the job title. So you don't necessarily want to put that on your resume. So talk more about what you did so they can see that alignment. Number 2, you have to design for your audience. Now, if you're designing for a human to read it, be aware that most recruiters will probably only look at your resume for 5 seconds. I've spoken to UX recruiters in the UK, in the US, in Australia, and a lot of them say, they literally have a stack of resumes and they literally sit there and go, yes, no, yes. So you have 5 seconds to get your point across. If your resume doesn't look good, it doesn't communicate your sort of design skills, you might get in that no pile. They might not even read your resume. So think about using things like infographics, star ratings, and a little bit of graphics, but not over the top. But you need to be careful because sometimes your resume might be read by what we call an ATS machine. So it's basically a scanner. And it may not even see a human's eyes. So if it's full of graphics, it may not even get sort of read properly by the scanner. So you need to use things like keywords that match the skills in the job ad. So if you can, try and work out if your resume is going to be read by a human recruiter or whether it's going to be read by a machine. When I've spoken to recruiters, some of them still say, yep, we still look at every CV in front of us in person. Others, if you're applying for a big company, they might put it through the scanners. So if you are designing for a scanner, you need to do things like spelling out acronyms. So they might not know IA, for instance. We call that information architecture. They might not know, or the scanner might know what IA is. So if they're after information architecture skills and you have IA, it might say you don't have those. And we don't want to use lots of graphics or symbols or avoid lots of fonts. The scanners don't sort of respond well to those. For all audiences, whether it's a scanner or a human, you have to make sure you use things like straightforward headings. Just be consistent: education, qualification, experience, referees, things like that. Number 3, this is quite important. Be specific and not vague. So instead of saying, I've got extensive usability testing experience, it's like, well, what does extensive mean? For one person, it might mean a lot, others not so much. It's a bit subjective. So be really punchy and specific. It might take time for you to collate this data, but say something like, I've facilitated over 200 usability test sessions with participants on 16 projects in the last 3 years. Like, wow, that's so much more powerful than saying I've got lots of experience. Number 4, we want to include an elevator pitch on your resume. An elevator pitch is that 30-second, if you're stuck in a lift with someone and they say, oh, what are you looking for? You have your elevator pitch rehearsed. It's a short statement that encapsulates your values, your key skills, maybe your achievements and your aspirations. So have that at the top of your resume. So for instance, I'm a talented and enthusiastic UX designer with more than 3 years experience in the financial services industry. I am currently seeking a UX design position to take my career to the next level. Number 5, include relevant education, training, and achievements. You might include your grades if they're good. If they're not good, I might not include them, but include them especially if you're a university graduate and have recently completed. The grades might be the key thing people are going after or looking for. If you are a bit older, don't include your completion date of your university degrees, because if you're 50, for instance, you might get a bit of ageism. You don't want people going, okay, they did their degree there, therefore they're this old. So you don't want people calculating how old you are. So the completion date doesn't necessarily matter. And make sure they're relevant. Don't include that basket weaving course you did, probably not relevant. Other thing is number 6, don't include referees. That sounds a bit crazy. You can have a line that says referees available upon request. The reason we do this is that when you're going for a job, if they're ready to check for the referees, they'll come to you and say, hey, we want to check your references. Can you please provide them? You then know that you're being shortlisted. And also, most importantly, you can prime your referees on the role. So you can phone up your referees and say, hey, I'm applying for this role. Expect a call from Joe Blogs. And this is the role. That way the referee can talk to the key attributes that you have that are relevant to that role. Number 7, we want to review and check. Make sure you check your resume has no spelling mistakes. Use tools like Grammarly. It's not a good look if you have typos in your resume. It's bad form. It shows you don't have that attention to detail. If you can, get someone to proofread it against the job ad. Look at the job ad and then look at your resume and go, yeah, that's a pretty good fit, or maybe you don't need to include this or something like that. Now I want to talk now about getting a UX job without 3 years of experience. A lot of people say, oh, I want to get a UX, but all the job ads say 3 years plus experience. So I'm going to tell you a little secret that may surprise you. It's estimated that the hidden job market accounts for 75 to even up to 95% of the total job market. Over the last 15 years or so, I've hired about probably 25 UX people, and I think I've only advertised once. So most of those people that I've filled just happened to be in the right place at the right time, natural attrition, someone's moved on, someone contacts me and say, hey, I'm interested, and I'm like, well, I was about to put a job ad, sure. And they touch base and connect. I've even had graduates connect with me, and we've kind of gone, okay, I've just lost our graduate, she's moved into to another country. Yeah, sure, come in and have a chat. So they may not have been the best person for the job, but they're just in the right place at the right time. So this is especially true for junior entry-level roles. And the reason for that is that there is a lot more supply for the junior roles as people are moving into this industry. So they don't need to advertise because there's so many junior people moving into the industry. So when you pore over the job ads that say must have 3 years experience, don't stress. Many job ads are placed by UX recruiters, and because recruiters generally don't work with newbies, they generally want to deal with people who are senior because their employers are paying the recruiter to find a more experienced person. So a lot of those junior roles are not advertised. So it's very easy for employers to find juniors, so they don't need to advertise. So how do you tap into this hidden job market? First of all, this is so important. Step 1, you have to network. You have to go to meetups, virtually or in person. And the other thing is connect with people on LinkedIn. So a graduate I recently hired, she connected with one of my team on LinkedIn. He said, oh, you need to speak to Tanya. She then connected with me. Right place, right time. So connect to people. Don't just say, hey, I'm looking for a job. Have you got anything? They're just going to go, sorry, we're not hiring at the moment. So my other thing is, once we connect with them, don't say I'm looking for a job. Say I'm looking for career advice. So ask to meet with industry leaders and seniors, connect up with people. Look up a company you want to work for and say, oh, I'd love to work for XYZ company. Look up the staff, connect with the people who are in the digital space. Go and then say to them, look, I'd love to get some career advice. Could you meet me for a virtual coffee or a real coffee? Maybe take 15, 20 minutes of your time. It's much more difficult for employers to say no to someone who wants career advice than to say, no, I'm looking for a job. And then when you have that meeting with them, it could be via Zoom or it could be in person. The other thing you need to do is say to them at the end of that session, thanks so much for your time. It's been really good. If they've got a job ad or if they've got a job available, they will let you know. If they think you're a good fit, they will say, well, actually, we've got a couple of jobs coming up. Flick me your CV and I'll see what I can do. So you're not hitting them up for a job, so it's not threatening in any way. The other thing you want to do out of that meeting is make sure your aim out of that meeting, your hidden aim is to get a job, but your main aim is to get 2 other people that you should speak to. So at the end of that session, say to them, thanks so much for your time. Can you recommend 2 other people that I should speak to get some advice? And then you go and do those 2 people and then you get 2 more from there. So you might go and speak to 20 people and then someone will say, oh, I heard there's a job going over at this company. You should go and talk to them. So that's how you find and tap into that hidden job market. Step 4, you don't want to downplay your past work experience. If you sidestepped from another role, don't sort of just negate that and say, oh, it's not important. Reframe your experience and communicate your relevant sort of experience and some of your soft skills. So if you've been a project manager in a construction industry, well, you've got organizational skills, you've probably got stakeholder management skills, you've probably got presentation skills. So you have a lot of soft skills that are relevant to the role. So make sure you sort of communicate that. And sometimes it's just about how you frame that experience. I'm not suggesting you lie. Sometimes you just use different words to say the same things. Now, if you do that and then you get that job interview, I'm going to give you a few tips for doing UX job interviews. Now, if you just Google interview tips, there's lots of just generic tips of which I encourage you to do, but I want to go through some that are a bit more specific to UX roles. Now, like any sort of industry, preparation is so important. It's the key to success. Make sure you research the company. Show how much you want to work for them. So don't just rock up and say, oh, what do you actually do here? That doesn't demonstrate to me as an employer that you really want to work here. So research the company. Be familiar with the job description so you can really talk to the essential points. And also, look up UX interview question banks. If you just search for UX interview questions, there's a lot of sort of common questions that might be a little bit different to other industries. Yes, there'll be the standard ones. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Things like that. But there'll often be things like the design approach. Tell me the approach you'd go through this, or how do you work with Agile, or things like that. So make sure you look those up and prepare some intelligent questions as well that you want to ask them. So you might ask things like, what is your design process? Do you do user testing at this company? What is the company's culture in relation to customer centricity? Now, before the interview, you want to make sure you dress and present yourself appropriately for the role. You might want to see if you can somehow sort of scout out, what's the standard uniform. If the standard uniform is sort of jeans and, black turtleneck tops, then maybe try and sort of dress to what the role is. But if you're going to a financial services company, the people interviewing might be wearing suits. So you need to dress appropriately. People shouldn't judge you on what you're wearing, but they do. So present yourself consistent with the culture of that organization. Make sure you're not late. Probably shouldn't have to say that, but it's bad form. During the interview, at the start of the interview, what I normally do is I ask them to give me an overview of the role. The reason I do that is even though you've got the job advertisement, what often happens is, well, that's the job ad we got signed off. But since we advertised that, a few things have changed and there's a few other things that we want people to be doing, or sometimes the role's just a little bit different to what's advertised. So it's good to know that at the start of the session to let them do a bit of the talking about what the role is. Once you know that, then you can tailor all your responses with that job description in mind. So make sure you're familiar with the job and ask them exactly what they're looking for so you can talk to those essential points during your interview. So good luck with your UX job hunting. And next, we're going to finally finish off on how to build your confidence and further your UX career.